Let's talk herd.
And that's also how how the sport is developing, that we are comparing who can control the horse. We compare us with other humans.
Yeah.
And our status between each other.
Yeah.
We could still have competitions, I think, because there are enough horses and enough people that would enjoy challenging themselves.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be to win over someone else.
No, exactly. It would be more of an exhibition of what was possible.
Yes, and to sort of perhaps challenge particular things that would come up in you when you do things together with other people, or when people see you, or you could use that as soul searching in a way. But it's like you say, all the equipment is based on limiting and controlling the energy, basically.
Yeah, it reminds me of, because even this, I saw a video. I don't usually watch things like this, but there was a mare, like a sport horse mare, being ridden in an arena, but she had her little foal there beside her.
Yeah.
And she was like, but she was being really like, it was so forced, and she was so held in, and it was so like, to me, it was so violent the way she was being ridden. And I just found it really disheartening, because everybody in the comments was so like, this is amazing. You know, he is so happy, the little foal, because he wasn't contained. And I just thought, maybe it's me that's seeing something wrong here. Like, I can't see the joy in that, but it just felt so wrong.
I think in a way what we do, because I'm thinking about dressage in this way, and the moment of collecting, that we first, you have to diminish the original vital force so that the horse will not frighten us. That's the first step that this wild pony at home told me with her 30 seconds, right? So then we need to create an artificial energy so that we have something to work with.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the artificial energy is created by creating stress in a closed environment. So I enhance the stress in my horse, for example, by limiting the space is enough for most horses. By shortening the reins and adding aids with my legs, I have raised a stress level that then cannot go outside of this room, which means that I'm pumping energy into this balloon as much as I want. I want tension, because otherwise I have nothing to show off and I have nothing to work with.
Exactly.
So I create this tension and I withhold it for as long as I want, which we then, I don't know the proper English terms for that, but that's how we show that the horse is collected, or that it's working in the right shape and
like
form.
Impulsion, I suppose
Yes.
people would say.
So that is a way of doing it. And have you never seen the difference? You would probably find that quite spectacular, because the horse is trying to move quite energetically and explosive, perhaps even within this limited space, and we can choose to see that as beauty, or as a force of nature. You know? But if you do it without limiting the space, again, you need to have a horse that has a particular interest. I'm thinking about a horse that comes to riding lessons about once a month, who has he's of a breed. He's a mix with a trotting horse, and he's a bit over. He can bend more than he should in his joints, which is a bit complicated. So he needs to be stronger in order to withhold his body. He really has an interest in carrying his rider and master his energy. He wants to be able to use his body as he wants to use it, when he wants to use it. So that's what when I give riding lessons, it always begins with asking the horse, why are you here? What do you want to use this space for? And so he wants to use it for carrying himself and be able to do to own his own body, you could say.
Yeah.
So if you do that work, it would be almost the opposite. Then he needs to find his core and be so strong in that he can lift himself based on his own mentality and muscular strength.
Yes.
It will almost be like a yogic training. And from that, he can then choose to release his energy when he wants to release it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like a dance.
Yes.
So it's a similar movement. It's still a horse that can carry himself, but it will not be with this head drawn in, because no one would choose that. So you take away the frame, and you actually can have those movements, but only if the horse wants to. And the horse needs lots of training to find that core strength.
Absolutely.
And physical awareness. And he would need to develop that with his rider. And that has to come from their relationship. That in turn has to be based on that she loves him no matter what. If she only loves him because of what he does, none of this will work anyway.
Absolutely. It can't be based on the result of it.
So there are ways of not doing it the way you describe. But that's not how we are trained. That's not what we learn in the riding schools. And that's not how our saddles and bridles are shaped.
I feel that, the word that I use for that, what you're talking about, kind of riding is engagement, because it's a real thing. You know, when you engage yourself and the horse engages, it's almost like being two cogs in a machine, but it's all based on flow. Like there has to be forward flow and no restriction at all. And it's almost like channeling that flow, but in a very comfortable way that brings joy. And I think when you do that, like you say, you have to be really aware of the stamina of the horse. Like, you know, you can't, I think we just so over assume with horses, like how much energy it takes to do that. Because even 5 minutes of that is huge, you know. For a lot of horses.
If I take this horse as an example, I go to the stable where that horse lives, and he comes into the arena, and he's very focused, and he always says what he wants to do. And then he needs some sort of warm-up, which he decides. And when he feels strong enough, then we do those exercises for 5 to 10 minutes, perhaps. And when he's found what he's looking for, normally also the rider immediately feels that we are completely content with what we have found today. And we're done. It's not that he's doing that for an hour.
No, exactly. It's so different. And it's not every day either. Like
no, definitely. No. I meet him normally once a month, and in between that he's sort of out in the forest or doing whatever they do. But he's a family horse, and they have developed this relationship over time. So because it takes a long time.
Does she use, what equipment does she use when she's doing that?
It's a bit different from time to time. He's very big and he has huge stride. So quite often she has some sort of, you know, these bareback thingies, like sheepskin things with a handle on. She normally has that because she needs to be placed well enough behind his withers to be in the exact spot for him to be able to raise himself. And sometimes they only use a ring around the neck. She just ties a lead rope actually and holds it. Sometimes he has a halter. I think he's had a bridle at times with this sort of rubber bit as well. To him, it seems less relevant I only mean him particularly now, what's on his head, because she always have more or less long reins anyway. For him, I think it's more important because his stamina is so important, so she needs to sit where her core becomes correct. in balance with his. So I think that is the most important part of it to him.
Yeah. I just love that potential, like that every partnership is like their own unique thing, and that there's just so much, it's so multi-dimensional. And I think as humans, we have this way of reducing everything down. So, it has to be in this particular routine, in this particular way. And it's just fear, really, isn't it?
Yes, and we want to know what's right. It's like people can ask, should you have a saddle? Should you not have a saddle? Should you have this and that? It's like, I can't tell. It depends on...
Yeah, there aren't any rules.
No, it depends on what will help the communication for this particular individuals at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Perhaps you see that there is lots of fear and trauma, and this horse perhaps never wants to be ridden again. But perhaps I can't go all that way on our first meeting. We need to start the communication on some level where we get used to the idea that horses are kind animals and they don't wish to harm us.
No.
And we need to start there. And hopefully in that process, something will happen with the human to finally begin to see that, perhaps riding is no longer important in our relationship. Or I think for most of us, like you say, when we start to question things on this level, we need to take a break in the riding because it's so confusing. When am I dominant? When am I not? I understand that I need to stand up for myself because otherwise the horse thinks I've really lost it. But how do I do that without imposing my will on the other one?
Exactly.
And all the horses are different, so they're not showing the same signals.
So true.
And I think this question is supposed to be complicated because it isn't a single answer. And I think for many of us who begin to walk that road, we end up, at least for a period in our lives, not riding because we just need to start from a new platform in a way.
Exactly. It's almost like a living thing that you have to give enough space to come alive again. And because I really, in my mind, I kind of think of those horses that are kind of fulfilled, like they're complete energetically, because they know that they've got choice and they're listened to. I always think of them as being kind of alive. And then there's the other ones that are, a bit like the mare you were talking about at the beginning. They've got that sense of helplessness and they're oppressed, and it just takes time for them to come alive again. And I think it has to happen a lot of the times. It just has to be with other horses and just
definitely
for a while until
definitely to come into this herd dynamics. And I think what we spoke about in the beginning, this opening of the self to include someone else, it seems like they do that all the time. So if you are a horse in a herd of horses that is healthy as it's designed to be, it means that you carry all the other ones inside you and they carry you. And that sort of union has a healing in itself. So it's like you say, when horses come here, and normally they only come here if they really can't live anywhere else, and they would be put down otherwise, and they're in a terrible state, mainly emotionally or mentally. We don't do anything at all. I mean, sometimes perhaps if they need medical attention, but I think it's giving them the space is much more healing than me imposing my will to make them feel as good as possible as soon as possible. I don't think that is so much about them. That's more about me. So I totally agree. It just give them space. And it's very hard for us.
Because that's a mindset as well, isn't it? That you have to fix things. Because I think as humans, when we start rescuing, we get into that rescuing mindset, and we have to heal and heal others, and and it's all quite I think it's like we have to just remember that they have all those mechanisms inside them to be themselves. Yeah. Like they just need the, like you say, the space to do that. And
and the space is, I think, like you say, it's having other horses, having enough room to actually be able to move, but also the space also contains of my mindset. I've realized this more and more over the years, that if I see myself as an owner, that will make this room different and smaller.
Absolutely.
Or if I see myself as basically a caretaker and my main job is actually to sweep the floor of this room and then remain in the background, then that will make a huge difference. Yeah. So the whole idea of ownership is, I find, a very big part in how much healing there is room for within this space, actually.
That's true. That's why I like to use the word guardian.
Yeah.
And I really feel that. And I also feel, for me, the stage, probably the stage after the ownership one, was the one of like being a healer. Like I've really let that healer thing go, because I realized they don't need, they're all really healthy, and they have been for ages, and it's just because there's like that. I don't have to be the healer anymore, because if you're a healer, then you have to have something to heal, like you say, and you just
exactly
set up that whole dynamic.
I agree. It takes a long time to realize how much the room itself will do. One of my great human teachers was a woman called Marion Rosen. And she started she founded the Rosen method.
Okay,
which is based on that the emotions that we haven't processed will somehow maintain in our muscles. And not all healing can go through our heads.
Yes.
We need to sort of relive the emotion and accept things for what they are before we can let them go. And she once said that the only thing you can do, you can never heal someone else, basically. The only thing that you can do for someone else is to be part of creating the room or the space where it will be enough room for the other one to become who they are supposed to be.
That's really beautiful.
That you can do for someone else. But that is, you can't step in actually further than that.
No, because it's their choice as well, and their soul purpose and everything. Yeah. And I think there's something about having to be a healer that's something in yourself that you need to, look at.
And I think if an extra healing is necessary, then that will show itself. It's like if you would need to add homeopathic, or you need the vet to check someone's teeth, or that will show itself, and then you add that, and then you step back again. It's not you who have done it. If you see the difference in that.
Like you were saying earlier about how we've regulated our lives so much, and the whole society is based on that control and the regime and everything. And like, it would be amazing if it could just be based on the flow of the universe. Like, that things happen just when they needed to at the perfect moment. And
also something that other species seem to explain is that nature is in itself generous. There is always something extra created.
That's a lovely way.
If it's up to nature, if this room allows it to be, then nature is very generous. And therefore, if we have caused damage and then leave nature to be, that is where that healing comes from. It's because this extra bit of generosity that will start to heal, or to make all these broken threads eventually reach each other.
Because we've kind of created this idea, haven't we, as humans, that we have to be something more than what we are, or do more just to have. Like, we have to pay our mortgage to have a house to live in. And, you know, the whole thing is kind of unnecessary, isn't it? But it's like we've created this whole, like, basically not very happy existence just to be alive.
No, not
just to have the right to live.
It's quite sad. And that's also something that when you have philosophical discussions with animals and humans wants to know, so what's the meaning of life? And as humans, we often speak about that there has to be development. It's like progress. You're born in this particular way, and then you develop and you progress and you become enlightened, and then finally you're free of it and you don't need to live anymore. And animals, all the animals I've met so far, they're almost offended. It's like, so you look for a meaning? It's like you have all this, the ability to live, to experience all this, and then you want a meaning outside of it. It's something about how we can actually experience that things are without purpose. And because we can be bored. I mean, you never hear a tree in a forest being bored, but we need this extra stimuli and an extra meaning outside of what we do. And I think this sort of fixing part in us that needs to fix everything is that we truly don't experience that things are exactly as they should from one aspect of looking at it. It's we feel the need to improve it. And I guess as humans we have this extra creativity because of our ability to interpret our thoughts. We have an extra creativity, but when that creativity has no connection with our true self and therefore doesn't include the rest of the world, then we really become quite dangerous for our surroundings, because we make our own interpretations and we start fix things everywhere.
It's like you get into your mind, you get into your thoughts, and then you can't feel anymore. So we're not actually aware of the abundance and the joy and everything that's there.
No, and we take it for granted, and we sort of wait for nature to tell us to stop. So it's like, okay, if we cut down all the trees, and as long as the trees don't tell us stop or come with some huge revenge, then we will just continue. But it's like it's not the duty of nature to tell us what to do. We have to be able to do that ourselves. It's like this is our responsibility.
And it's like, I think that is just a lack of sensitivity to the energy. Like if people feel the energy of the trees, they could never do that. They could never cut them. So it's like, for me, that was kind of my path into like being aware of all of that, was doing a therapy where you use energy, let you feel energy. So it was just like it's just becoming sensitive to energy, really. And I think that we put, we say that there's this and there's that type, and we use like all of this vocabulary and stuff, but I think it's just everything is energy, and we can be aware of it as well. Like we can, I think it's our the mental noise and the whole cognitive aspect of it that just doesn't go there. It's just somehow separate. And that's the danger.
That is the danger, is our separation. So I think what happened with this pony in showing that there is a way to overcome that gap. Meaning if that is possible for one human, then it is possible for humanity. What one human can do, we can do. So we're not doomed to be separate, closed off individuals, but we need to consciously do something about it. It's not going to happen by itself. It will happen by itself the day it happens, because you can't control how it happens. But you still need to challenge yourself to some level and really want it, because otherwise we get stuck in our comfort, I think, or in our numbness, because we're so used to it. And it's, at first sight, it's a lot easier to be numb and closed off, because you don't need to take the consequence of that. Okay, so if I feel what my horse feels and he really doesn't want me to ride, and I know that, then I need to do something about it. Then I can't just continue like I did before. But if I can close that off, and I can rely on my own interpretation, and I compare that with other people's interpretations that has a similar opinion, then that becomes a general truth. And then I stick to that general truth, because that's how I've built up, like you say, I've built my entire life around that concept. I have this huge mortgage. I need to pay my bills. I need to do what I have to do, because this is what life is. And look at all the other humans. They also do exactly that. So if I start to question that whole thing, because all of a sudden every living being has a person communicating with me, that just, what do I do with that?
It's like a complete, you have to be willing to let go of that old identity. And do you think that people just have to suffer enough before they make that shift? Or
I think suffering is one way. It seems like, and I can look at myself too. I wouldn't challenge myself unless I had to. We really need to have, in Swedish you say, you need to have the knife on your throat.
Yeah, because everybody seems
perhaps I should do something.
When I've asked quite a lot of people that, and a lot of people believe that there's a way you can learn or awaken without suffering, but they didn't do it that way. They always so I just
no, exactly. I think we don't want to sound negative. We want it to be a way that is without suffering. It's just that no one tried it, so we don't know exactly what it looks like. But I think it has to be a longing. At least it has to be a longing that deep down we know that this is not right, even if we can't phrase it. And I guess having that longing and not responding to it will eventually become painful, or at least uncomfortable. But if you are totally comfortable within this reality of very little compassion, then why then would you, or even successful?
Exactly.
Why would you
maybe
change
nobody
it
can
then?
be, because it's not who we really are. So if you could actually be, if you're truly happy in that, it doesn't make sense, because then there would be no reason to awaken.
No.
So how was your spiritual, what was your spiritual path, like your awakening? Have you done any particular?
I think for me, it started when I was very young, very young. My father died when I was 5 in what could have been a suicide. It's a bit unclear. Most likely he had some sort of autistic side to him. This was a long time ago. I was born in 1974, so this was 1979, and those diagnoses were not so common then. But when I look at it afterwards, he was a scientist in abstract mathematics, and he was not really available to this world, to say the least. So, and I was with him when he died, and that was such a huge, that destroyed me and changed me in so many ways. So I can know what I have done before and after that. But I know that before that, so it's not only that. Before that, I used to think about eternity to such an extent that I would develop panic attacks. And I used to lie in bed, and I have no idea why, because I must have been younger than 5, since I know that he was still alive. That's how I measure time. So I was most likely around 4, when I was obsessed with the thought of whether the universe was expanding or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to call it, but I couldn't stop thinking about this. And so my thought was, if the universe has an end, for it to expand, it must have an end. Otherwise, it can't expand. Then it's eternal. So if it expands, it means that you can go to the utmost limit of the reality so far. And what happens if you stand on that line, and if you get across it? Would you then cease to exist because you have stepped outside of what exists? Or will it actually move because you come with awareness, and then it sort of, you push it forward, and that's how it expands. And then I started to think about eternity, and I would say eternity so many times in my mind that I panicked.
That's amazing.
And then I had this stack of magazines, because I learned to read when I was very young. So I had these comic magazines that I would read until I was normal again. And then I would turn off the lamp, and then I would start again.
Amazing.
With eternity, and expansion. And then I realized that this is still what fascinates me the most. What happens if you go to the limit of what reality includes so far, and what happens if it moves? So I guess that is the origin to the spiritual search. In my case, the horses came in later. I was 6 when I started to meet horses, and 11 when I met this pony. But this unknown interest in what is beyond this reality, that came first.
It's almost like seeing the space, like being aware of the space. Because I would say when I sort of think about what you're saying, I just take it for granted that if something, like if I become something new, that it just is like. So it's really fascinating. It's a really fascinating way to look at it, to kind of, wow.
So that's how it started. And then it went on from there. And I guess that came after my father died, because when you're so young and a parent dies, it also means that something that you really can't imagine happens, and it happens. And it happens from one second to another. So in a way, it totally traumatizes you, because you can never trust anything again. And in another way, in the complete opposite way, you can totally give yourself to life, because you know that everything is going to get lost anyway. You actually get both. And I think probably based on that experience at a young age, I also developed a way of looking at life. I don't know where this came from, but it was with me for years, that the Earth was a person, the actual planet. So the Earth was dreaming about us. So we only exist because the Earth dreams about us. And one day Earth wakes up, and then we are just gone, because we were never real.
Amazing. And that just came to you.
Yes, I can't remember anyone telling me that. I remember that if I had a dream about it or something, but it started somehow from within, that we exist within, we are participants in a dream that is dreamt by the Earth.
It's amazing.
And somewhere along.
Did you ever share these thoughts with your mother or anybody else?
My mother and I didn't really have a good relationship, because I don't know what you call that in English actually, but when you don't develop these ties to your child, because
the depression.
I don't know.
Neonatal.
Yes, exactly. She had that. And having children was not really her thing. So before my father died, he went to my grandmother, my mother's mother actually, and said, if something happens to me, can you take care of Emelie? And my mother's mother, in Swedish we have different words for if you are the grandmother from the father or mother's
that's
side.
helpful, isn't it?
Yeah, it helps a bit, so you don't need to. Anyway, she was psychic. Wow. She could see sort of angels, and she believed in all sorts of things. My father didn't believe in anything. He was the complete scientist. And for some reason, they became very good friends. And she was psychic, and she told me afterwards that when my father came and said, if anything happens to me, can you look after Emelie? She saw that he was going to die. And she didn't want to believe it. So she kind of closed it off. But that's also one of the reasons why we think he did this on purpose. So she took over the upbringing of me. And she believed in all these things. So I could tell her whatever I experienced. And to her, it would be normal. Yeah. So whatever I told her, she would just say it's normal.
Yeah, to have that encouragement. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Because I think very many children probably have those kind of thoughts. And they probably try to share them.
Yeah.
And most likely they hear that, whoever listens think it's just whatever symbolic or doesn't really have a meaning, or they just tell them that this is not true. This is what reality is. Yeah. And then we lose the contact to that side of ourselves in a way.